The laboratory was a tomb of forgotten dreams, a place where the echoes of a dead civilization hummed in the walls. It was a labyrinth of glass and steel, its corridors lined with dormant machines that once buzzed with the promise of immortality. Now they stood silent, their screens dark, their purpose erased by the passage of time and the weight of extinction. The air was thick with the scent of ozone and the faint, metallic tang of blood, old blood, dried and forgotten, like the memories of the world that once was. In the heart of this labyrinth, Dr. Ilara Voss worked tirelessly, her hands moving with the precision of a surgeon and the desperation of a woman who had nothing left to lose. She was the last human, the sole survivor of an alien holocaust that had wiped out her species in a single, cataclysmic night. Her dark hair, streaked with silver, was tied back in a loose braid, and her eyes, a piercing green that seemed to see through the veil of reality, were fixed on the holographic display before her. The display showed a map of the galaxy, its stars flickering like dying embers. In the center of the map was a single pulsing red dot, Earth. Ilara was not a woman given to sentimentality. She had long since buried her grief beneath layers of logic and determination. But even she could not escape the weight of her solitude. The laboratory was her sanctuary and her prison, a place where she could both remember and forget. She had spent the last decade here, piecing together the fragments of her shattered world, searching for a way to undo what had been done. Her motivation was simple: survival. Not just her own, but the survival of everything that had ever been. The conflict that drove her was not one of revenge, though the aliens who had destroyed her world deserved it. It was a conflict of purpose. Ilara believed that humanity's extinction was not the end, but a mistake, a cosmic error that could be corrected. She had dedicated her life to proving this, to finding a way to bring her species back from the brink. But the task was monumental, and the odds were against her. The aliens, known only as the Voidborn, were a race of unimaginable power, their technology so advanced that it seemed like magic. They had swept through the galaxy like a plague, leaving nothing but ash and silence in their wake. Ilara's laboratory was a fortress, hidden deep within the ruins of a dead city. The city itself was a graveyard, its skyscrapers crumbling, its streets overgrown with weeds. The only sound was the wind, whispering through the broken windows and rusted cars. But within the laboratory, there was life. The hum of generators, the soft whir of machines, the occasional beep of a monitor. These were the sounds of Ilara's world, a world she had built from the ashes of the old one. And then there was the cat. The cat was a mystery, a creature that had no business existing in a world where even the rats had gone extinct. It was a small, sleek thing, with fur as black as the void and eyes that glowed like twin suns. It had appeared one day, seemingly out of nowhere, and had made itself at home in the laboratory. Ilara had named it Nyx, after the ancient goddess of night. Nyx was her constant companion, a silent witness to her work, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there was still life. But Nyx was not the only anomaly in the laboratory. Deep within its depths, hidden behind layers of security and secrecy, was something far more extraordinary: an extinction dragon. The creature was a relic of a bygone era, a being of pure energy and destruction, bound by ancient technology to serve as a weapon of last resort. Ilara had found it in the ruins of a research facility, its containment unit barely intact. She had spent years studying it, learning its secrets, and ultimately taming it. The dragon was her greatest weapon, a living embodiment of the power that had destroyed her world. But it was also her greatest risk. If the Voidborn ever discovered its existence, they would stop at nothing to claim it. As Alara worked, her mind wandered, drifting between the past and the present. She thought of the world she had lost, of the people she had loved, of the future she was trying to build. She thought of the Voidborn, their cold, calculating eyes, their relentless pursuit of perfection. And she thought of the dragon, its fiery breath, its endless hunger. She knew that her time was running out, that the Voidborn would come for her eventually. But she also knew that she was not alone. She had Nyx, and she had the dragon, and together they would fight. The laboratory was a tomb, but it was also a cradle. It was a place where the past and the future collided, where the impossible became possible. And as Alara worked, her hands moving with purpose and precision, she felt a spark of hope, a tiny, flickering flame in the darkness. It was enough. For now, it was enough. The sky above the dead city was a canvas of ash and smoke, the sun a dim, red orb struggling to pierce the haze. Alara stood on the roof of the laboratory, her eyes scanning the horizon. She had known this day would come, had prepared for it in every way she could. But now that it was here, she felt a cold knot of fear tighten in her chest. The Voidborn were coming. She could feel it in the air, a subtle shift in the atmosphere, a vibration that resonated deep within her bones. The aliens were not subtle creatures, but they were efficient. They would not announce their arrival with fanfare or spectacle. They would simply appear, like shadows in the night, and by the time she realized they were there, it would be too late. Alara turned and descended into the laboratory, her mind racing. She had to act quickly, but she also had to be careful. The Voidborn were not to be underestimated. They were a race of perfectionists, their every move calculated, their every action precise. They would not make mistakes, and neither could she. Nyx was waiting for her at the bottom of the stairs, his eyes glowing in the dim light. He meowed softly, a sound that was both comforting and unnerving. Alara knelt down and scratched him behind the ears, her fingers trembling slightly. "Stay close," she whispered. "Things are about to get dangerous." The laboratory was a maze of corridors and rooms, each one filled with machines and equipment that Alara had spent years perfecting. She moved through it with the ease of someone who had walked these paths 1,000 times before, her mind focused on the task at hand. She had to activate the dragon. The Extinction Dragon was housed in a chamber deep within the laboratory, its containment unit a massive, cylindrical structure that pulsed with a faint, blue light. Alara approached it with caution, her heart pounding in her chest. The dragon was a creature of immense power, but it was also unpredictable. She had spent years studying it, learning its patterns, its behaviors. But she knew that it was not truly tamed. It was a wild thing, bound by technology, but not by loyalty. She placed her hand on the control panel, her fingers hovering over the activation switch. For a moment, she hesitated. Once she activated the dragon, there would be no turning back. The Voidborn would sense its presence, and they would come for it. But she had no choice. She needed the dragon's power if she was to have any hope of surviving the coming battle. With a deep breath, she flipped the switch. The containment unit hissed as it opened, releasing a cloud of steam. The dragon emerged slowly, its form shifting and shimmering like liquid fire. It was a creature of pure energy, its body a swirling mass of light and shadow. Its eyes burned with an intensity that made Alara's skin crawl, and its voice, when it spoke, was a low, resonant growl that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "You have summoned me," it said, its voice echoing in the chamber. "Why?" Alara swallowed hard, her throat dry. "The Voidborn are coming," she said. "I need your help to stop them." The dragon tilted its head, its eyes narrowing. "The Void-born are not my concern," it said. "I am a creature of destruction, not salvation." "You are bound to me," Ilara said, her voice steady despite the fear that gnawed at her. "And I am bound to this world. If the Void-born destroy it, there will be nothing left for either of us." The dragon was silent for a moment, its form flickering like a dying flame. Then it nodded, a slow, deliberate motion. "Very well," it said. "I will fight. But know this, human, I am not your ally. I am your weapon, and weapons have no loyalty." Ilara nodded, her heart heavy with the weight of what she had done. She had unleashed a force that she could not control, a creature that could just as easily turn on her as it could on the Voidborn. But she had no choice. The stakes were too high, the odds too great. She would have to trust the dragon, even if it meant risking everything. As she turned to leave the chamber, she heard a sound that made her blood run cold. It was a low, humming noise, like the vibration of 1,000 wings. The Void-born had arrived. The laboratory was under siege. The Void-born had come in force, their ships descending from the sky like a swarm of locusts. They were creatures of darkness, their forms shifting and fluid, their eyes glowing with a cold, malevolent light. They moved with a precision that was almost mechanical, their every action calculated, their every move deliberate. They were a force of nature, a storm that could not be stopped. Ilara stood in the control room, her hands flying over the console as she activated the laboratory's defenses. The walls were lined with turrets, their barrels spinning as they locked onto the incoming aliens. The air was filled with the sound of gunfire and the hum of energy weapons, the laboratory shaking with the force of the battle. Nyx was at her side, his fur bristling, his eyes glowing with a fierce intensity. He was more than just a cat, Ilara realized. He was a guardian, a protector, and he was ready to fight. The dragon was outside, its form a blazing inferno as it tore through the Void-born ranks. It was a creature of pure destruction, its every movement a symphony of chaos. It breathed fire, its flames consuming everything in their path, and its claws tore through the aliens like they were made of paper. But even the dragon was not invincible. The Void-born were relentless, their numbers seemingly endless. For every one that fell, 2 more took its place. Ilara knew that she could not win this battle through force alone. The Void-born were too powerful, too numerous. She needed a different strategy, a way to turn the tide, and she had one. Deep within the laboratory was a device, a weapon of her own design. It was called a resonance cannon, and it was capable of emitting a frequency that would disrupt the Void-born's neural networks, rendering them helpless. But it was a risky move. The cannon required a massive amount of energy, and there was no guarantee that it would work. But it was her only hope. She turned to Nyx, her eyes filled with determination. "Stay here," she said. "I have to activate the cannon." Nyx meowed softly, his eyes filled with concern. But he did not follow her as she left the control room, his gaze fixed on the battle outside. Ilara moved through the laboratory with a speed born of desperation, her mind focused on the task at hand. The cannon was housed in a chamber at the far end of the facility, its control panel a complex array of switches and dials. She approached it with caution, her hands trembling as she began the activation sequence. The laboratory shook as the cannon powered up, the air filled with the sound of grinding metal and the hum of energy. Ilara could feel the power building, a pressure that seemed to press against her very soul. She knew that she was risking everything, that the cannon could just as easily destroy the laboratory as it could the Voidborn. But she had no choice. With a final, deep breath, She activated the cannon. The world exploded in light and sound, the laboratory shaking with the force of the blast. The Void-born were thrown back, their forms disintegrating as the frequency tore through them. The dragon roared, its form flickering as it struggled to maintain its cohesion. And Alara fell to her knees, her vision blurring as the energy washed over her. When the light faded, the laboratory was silent. The Void-born were gone, their ships reduced to ash. The dragon was still there, its form flickering like a dying flame. And Nyx was at her side, his eyes filled with concern. Ilara smiled weakly, her body trembling with exhaustion. "We did it," she whispered. "We won." But as she looked out at the ruins of the laboratory, at the destruction that surrounded her, she knew that the battle was far from over. The Void-born would return, and when they did, she would be ready. She had the dragon, and she had Nyx. And together, they would fight. The laboratory was a tomb, but it was also a cradle. It was a place where the past and the future collided, where the impossible became possible. And as Alara stood amidst the ruins, her eyes fixed on the horizon, she felt a spark of hope, a tiny, flickering flame in the darkness. It was enough. For now, it was enough.